Barry Gibb's interview, roll one, scene one, sound one, marker.
Can you begin by talking about when you went up to the Apollo to see Otis Redding?
Yeah, well, let me start at the beginning. First of all, I made my first trip to the United States with our manager, Robert Stigwood, in about 1967. And Otis Redding was playing at the Apollo, and along with Sam and Dave, quite a few other soul acts. And Ahmet Ertegun and Robert Stigwood took me down there to see Otis and the show, and it was amazing. We were probably the only white people in an audience of about 1,000 to 2,000 black people, and it was amazing. And the reason behind all this was that Robert at the time and Otis wanted us to write a song for him. So we met for a little while at the Waldorf Astoria before the show, or perhaps after it. It's 1967. It's a little difficult to remember. But we sat and chatted for a while, and Robert and Otis then went out to dinner, and I went to work. And when Robert came back that night, the song that was written for Otis, which was obviously never recorded by him, was called To Love Somebody. And it was consequently recorded by ourselves. And, but someone like Otis, to me, was, I suppose, the first real soul singer to emerge out of that, out of the early black music, and made an enormous impression on many, many white artists, including ourselves. Oh, movement. All right, sorry.
Can we stop a second?
Good.
Okay, mark it.
Sound two, marker.
Just continue talking about Otis.
Yes.
Things about when you met him.
Well, I mean, to me, it was sort of a half-hour discussion, but one could see that this was a very personable man, a very strong, seemed to emanate from him. He knew what he was doing. He knew the music, and it's very difficult to say any more than that. This was a man with a lot of soul, and I think if you go back far enough to the early days, when I say the early days, I mean the late '60s, our early days, I would say, that, and you listen to Robin's voice, or the voices of this group in particular, they were very heavily influenced by Otis Redding. This man definitely had an effect on white singers to the extent that no other black performer had. And I think that will go on and on. I think you still hear it today in a lot of people's voices. His phrasing, his feeling when he sang, you know, it filled everybody.
Do you have a favorite song?
My favorite song of Otis Redding is Try a Little Tenderness. No question. But there are many. Yeah.
Can you tell us about Sam Cooke? Was he influential
Sam
on
Cooke.
you? Did you
Yes,
see
very
him
much
work?
so. Very much so. Cupid and all those records. We followed his career very closely too. We bought his records. And it's interesting that we did buy or get involved in a lot of black artists' records, more so than white people. And we like to sing that way ourselves. I mean, it's not the same when you're white. You tend to copy as opposed to feel the same way. But with this man, there was a stronger influence. You definitely performed better if you felt that you were singing like him, you know. Sam Cooke or Otis Redding, same type of thing.
Do you think their performances were captured in recordings as well as visually on film?
Well, I think that their stage performances, live performances, may or may not have been captured. I've never heard on record what I've seen on stage. It's just an amazing thing. It's like a gospel meeting, and you don't get that type of thing on record unless you're lucky. And if I know Ahmet Ertegun, it's probably on tape somewhere, you know. It's wonderful stuff. You don't get it on record, or you're very unlikely to, you know. But their records were tremendous. That was a different thing. You know, I was at the Speakeasy in London in 1967, 68, where Otis and Sam and Dave both performed, and the room was probably only twice the size of the room we're sitting in now. The atmosphere was unbelievable, and it was never recorded. It was just magic, you know.
Can you talk about Billy Haley?
Bill Haley, we started performing 1955. We did our first show, and that was, I think, the year that Rockin' Around the Clock came out, and the Kiss Curl and everything, and we were called the Rattlesnakes at the time. It's, something we tried to live down. And we would go on stage, and we never sang Rock Around the Clock, but I do remember it being very vivid in our minds that that was the record out there, and this was the beginning of rock and roll, and there were other groups like us. You know, it was a very, very nostalgic time.
Had you moved?
Cut the sound?
It's clear now.
Okay, let's keep it, okay.
Had you moved to Australia by the time Buddy Holly played there? I think it was in 1957. Were you still in Manchester?
Yeah, Buddy Holly performed in England before we left,
Uh-huh.
and that was, we left in 1958 for Australia, and I remember his tour being in England at the time, or around that period before we left, yes. And,
Can you say anything about how his music influenced the Brothers Gibb?
it's very difficult to say. You applied what record you heard, you applied to how you were singing. You thought, well, that's good, I'll try doing something like that. And Bobby V and people like that were the same category. You listened to those people. Carole King was another big impression on us, and all of these people sort of rolled up. It was never one particular, until Otis Redding, until about 1967, 68. It was never one particular artist, it was a whole field, you know. That kind of thing, that kind of rock, you know.
Well, talking about that time, 1967, I believe that's when you made your debut on Top of the Pops that year, and there were a whole lot of other people.
Yeah.
Hendrix, the London
Yeah.
scene, quote unquote. Can you
Yeah.
talk about that excitement?
Like,
that
the
era?
Caftans and the and the Cromwellian and all the different clubs. And I came to know Jimi Hendrix a little bit better than I knew most other artists. In fact, he came to my 21st birthday party in, I think it was in Holland. We were doing television over there at some stage, and there was Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick, and Titch. I remember them very well. Yeah.
Talk about that excitement.
Like,
that
the
era?
Caftans and the and the Cromwellian and all the different clubs. And I came to know Jimi Hendrix a little bit better than I knew most other artists. In fact, he came to my 21st birthday party in, I think it was in Holland. We were doing television over there at some stage, and there was Dave D, Dozy, Beaky, Mick, and Titch. I remember them very well. And Jimi Hendrix was the kind of opposite personality that you would expect him to be on stage. Very warm, very quiet. Nothing like that person standing on stage that you didn't feel that you could get near, you know. Nice man. It's a great shame we lost him. Yeah.
What about Janis?
I never knew Janis Joplin, but she recorded one of our songs, and we were always grateful for that.
Which song did
She recorded To Love Somebody, yes. And once again, we were knocked out by that. In that area as well, Elvis Presley recorded Words, which was another great moment for us, you know. We love these people, and we follow them for years, and to have somebody sing one of your songs, like someone like that, is something you can't explain.
you know Elvis?
No. Got to his front door once. He never came to mine. No, he wasn't in at the time. Yeah. Yeah, but they let us through the gates. His uncle let us through the gates, and we drove up to the front door, and they didn't tell us he was out until we got to the front door. But it was interesting experience.
I've got about 12 minutes, Charlie was
Why don't you come for a mention?
Sound 3 marker.
I probably knew Jimi Hendrix a little better than most artists that I've met. I found him to be the opposite to the way you would expect someone like Jimi Hendrix to be on stage, in that he was a very warm and quiet person and not the outrageous type of person you would expect to see or hear. He came to my 21st birthday party in Holland, and he was a very nice man. No, I want to do this again. Stop the tape. It sounds weird.
Okay, sound roll 2, film roll 2, sound 4 marker.
Barry, we were talking before about the times, and I wondered if you could maybe talk about how things have changed and how they haven't.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Well, because to us, I don't think times have changed all that much. We still do the same things. We still make records the same as we did in the 50s, except they're more technologically better than then, I suppose. But I remember going back to as long ago as 1955, that we as children, or even my brothers who were considerably younger than me, were just as interested in records as teenagers or adults. I don't think that's changed. I think children, we talk about children being younger and younger involved in pop music today, and it was simply, that was the case then too. It's never really changed that much. And that's good, I think. That's good. Oh, Robin, yeah, yes. In fact, in those days, Robin did have he was about 6 years old and he had a Kiss curl. So I guess you could say that we were definitely followers of people like Bill Haley and the Comets and Frankie Lyman and the Teenagers, which was a name you conjured up a few minutes ago. They were fantastic days, you know. For us as children, being very young and singing pop music and appearing on stage was fantastic for us. I mean, we had the best upbringing I know about. You know.
The other fantastic days we were talking about were at the Speakeasy, the London scene. Could you tell us a little bit about your memories of what that was like?
Well, we first arrived, we lived in Australia till about 1967, and then we came back to London to the midst of the Mersey boom, or the later stages of the Mersey boom. And we went to NEMS. We took our tapes around, as you do, you know, and you try to get a break. And we went to visit NEMS, and we didn't know Robert Stigwood at this time. And we met him that day, and we also met on the same day Brian Epstein and Ringo Starr. And I think you have to imagine being young kids like us, walking into these offices and meeting these people. It's like you are meeting legends in a way, and it was a very exciting period for us. And but those were particularly crazy days. This was just prior to Flower Power and caftans and flowers in your hair and all that business, which we were ready to adopt. Everybody did, you know. It didn't affect us any differently. Everyone wanted to be the same, and that's interesting too when you think about it, how quickly everybody followed that situation. I guess some of the most exciting times of the 60s were going to the late night clubs after you finished work, after you finished doing your gig. You'd go down to the Speakeasy, which was the center, where most of the artists would gather and eat and chat and listen to the music. And in those days, you would see as many as 10 to 15 major artists in the same restaurant or in the same room, totally disregarding each other and doing whatever they wanted or just enjoying themselves. I met John Lennon in the Speakeasy. I also met Brian Jones and a few of the Stones down there. They were everywhere. It was incredible.
Can you talk about Sgt. Pepper as an influence, or the Beatles
Yeah.
as a musical influence?
Well, the Beatles were definitely a musical influence, and I would go on to add who wasn't influenced by the Beatles. I mean, every artist that we see today was influenced in some way by that whole period and by that group. they were a phenomena, and we love them just as much today, I think. And of course, Sgt. Pepper was a major influence on us, as it was many artists that tried to emulate it or tried to do something like it. They were fortunate in the respect that they had someone like George Martin. They had facilities that were a little bit further ahead than most groups were able to afford, and they were able to experiment more. Although, having spoken to George Martin since, he claims to this day that wouldn't it be great if we had 4-track studios to work in instead of 24-track studios, because then we could be more inventive like we were in those days, and I think that's a very good comment. Yeah.
Could you speak about the term crossover, or whatever happened in rock history, as far as the translation of black audience
Yes.
to white?
Well, I think that as far back as you go, there was always such a thing as, for want of a better word, I guess, crossover. I mean, white artists did sell records to black people, and black artists did sell records to white people. That still goes on today. And if you go back a long way, people like Marvin Gaye and the early Otis Redding woke white people up to real soul music, which is something that they hadn't been involved in, they hadn't really got into. And it mixed in with the beat boom, with the Mersey boom pretty well, and I would call that crossover. I don't see what else you could call it. Today, it's still a great privilege to sell, if you're selling records to a black audience, and I think it's just as nice for a black artist to see that white people appreciate what he's doing, or she, you know. So I still think it happens, and I think it always has.
What was the feeling at the times during the 60s of European feelings of looking at American artists, like jazz and Hendrix at the time?
Well, I still think it's, I think it was a worship situation where no matter, even if England was at the front of the music scene in a way, it didn't really regard itself as that. In other words, it's still, English artists and English people still appreciated American artists more so than their own artists. That's still very much, England always sort of looked up to America as a music scene. And when you go to America, you see that the opposite was in fact happening, but England didn't realize it. And still feels the same way. England still looks up to America, and that's right. There are a lot of tremendous artists in this country that England unfortunately doesn't have and doesn't see enough of. So there's always that looking up situation, you know.
I just remembered another question. Did you see Jimi Hendrix when he was on the Lulu show and they took it off the air? Do you remember that?
I remember it being done because at the time, Morris, of course, my brother, was married to Lulu. And I do remember the event. I don't know what exactly happened. I even remember the night. There were many phone calls about it, but I really didn't witness it, so it's hard for me to talk. I did see Jimmy at Madison Square Gardens, and that was amazing.
Barry, could you maybe rephrase that to include
Sure.
the Lulu show, to introduce that piece we're showing it?
Oh, okay. How do you want me to rephrase it? I mean, well,
I didn't actually see, the Lulu appearance. I don't know. Jimi Hendrix, I heard about it, the phones were ringing, something like that.
yeah. Well, I heard about it, and the phones, of course, were ringing off the hook. I remember the day that it happened. I didn't witness it, but it was the Lulu show, and I remember Lulu being disturbed about it, but I never saw it. Can I see it now?
Is there anything that you'd want to say about Jim Morrison?
No, I've never been a fan of Jim Morrison's. It's just one of those artists that he appealed to a cult, still does, and that's fine.
Can you explain why Buddy Holly seemed to have bigger success abroad than he did in the United States? Even Jimi Hendrix, for that matter.
I just think there's a bigger magic. There's always a bigger magic field on the other side of the track than there is where you live. Although some people say it's nice to work in your hometown or it's nice to work in your home country and you're always appreciated more. But I think, for instance, if we went to Italy, we'd have a bigger reaction in Italy than we would have in the United States, were we to work here. So there is a certain magic about working in another country, or about the way an audience treats an artist if they've never seen the artist or if the artist is a foreigner. It definitely definitely is a stronger thing. I don't know why that is, and I can't explain it, but that is the case. Yeah.
Did Elvis Presley influence you as a vocalist?
Very much so. Very much so. In fact, I'm probably the epitome of an Elvis Presley fan. I mean, I've followed Elvis since I was a little boy, and obviously I can't follow him anymore, but I do still listen to all his records, and I'm still very much a fan, and I love him just as much.
You have an airplane.
Oh, we have an airplane. Okay. Just
One cut, wait for it? Yeah.
just ask me the same question again. Yeah.
Are we cut?
All right. Mark it.
Sound 5 marker.
You were saying that you were the epitome of an Elvis Presley.
I still am. The
Oh,
that's Elvis.
Sound roll 3, film roll 3, sound 6 marker.
you once said that you were the epitome of an Elvis Presley fan.
Well, I always have been a big Elvis Presley fan, way back, and still now I listen to a lot of his records. He is, to me, probably the most, and to many, the most magnetic performer I think that ever performed. You know, I mean, he was tremendous. We still listen to his records to this day, and we were very fortunate enough once again to have had one song recorded by him. It's a wonderful performer. Tell by the hair, can't you?
Did you ever see him?
No, oh yeah, well, no, we didn't actually meet him, but we were in Memphis one time for a show, and we went up to Gracelands to see if we could meet him, and his uncle was at the gates. I think his uncle's name is Vernon, and he actually led us through the gates, and we drove up to the house.
It's his father, if you want to correct it.
Oh, his father's Vernon, isn't it? Well, his uncle, what's his uncle's name? It doesn't matter.
I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah, no, it's all right. God. Bloody directors. Okay. We're a team, right, okay. Yeah, we... Yeah.
I don't want a million letters from
Right. Yes, we never did meet Elvis, but we did a show in Memphis once, and we went up to Gracelands to see if there was a chance we could meet him. And his uncle was at the gatehouse and opened the gates and let us in. We drove up to the house and up to the front door, and one thing we hadn't noticed, and I don't think people noticed from the gates, is that all of the windows are barred, very big bars on all of them. So I don't think anyone could actually get in that place with the greatest desire to. We got to the front door, and his one of the big cars was outside with the television in the back. We figured he was home, but we were wrong. I don't think we'd have got to the front door had he been home, but they allowed us to go up there and take pictures of the front door, and isn't it amazing what you get up to, you know? Take pictures of the front door, you know. But, you know, it was a pleasure to do that. We're all fans of the man, and it was nice to get that close.
Which of his recordings do you think are the most important today?
My goodness. It would be... No artist likes to be told that the earliest recordings were the best, but I think in Elvis's case, they most definitely were. I mean, Blue Suede Shoes and Jailhouse Rock and all of these records still seem to outlive any of the later recordings that he did. I don't know why that is. Suspicious Minds was a marvelous record. There were a lot of great records that he made prior to his death. But I think everybody would agree that the early ones were the ones that took the world by storm, I think. Yeah.
There are a lot of people who use titles in rock and roll. A lot of critics. Bill Haley was called the father of rock and roll by some. Sam Cooke, the father of soul.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have any feelings about whether these are relevant at all?
Well, they just reflect a general opinion of the person, and I don't think it's part of the hype or just part of management saying these things or creating these titles. They were definite terms of emotional closeness that people felt towards these people. I think those things apply. I think they apply.
Maybe rephrase that to include those titles as a reference to those people, those artists. I don't know. You say, well, some people call Bill Haley the father of rock, or Elvis the king of rock. Or
Yes, well, I think, yes, those titles do apply. Yes. There were many titles given to many artists. For instance, Elvis Presley was called the king of rock and roll. Bill Haley was called the father of rock and roll. And I think these titles apply. This is how people feel about those people. They were not business hypes. They were true leaders in what they were doing, and I think those titles apply.
Did you ever see Sam Cooke?
No, I never saw him perform. No. Sorry, Sam.
did Jimi
Yeah.
Hendrix influence you as a guitar player? Are we gonna
Well,
Why don't you cut for 1 second, Josh? She's
Yeah.
got to fix a piece of this here.
it's difficult.
Sound 7 marker.
What Elvis Presley records do you think are the most important today?
As much as we would love the later material, I think that you'd still have to say that the earlier songs and the earlier hits were the ones that really counted. For instance, Jailhouse Rock and Blue Suede Shoes.
Can you just rephrase it and say Elvis's name as you start to talk about
Okay.
the recording?
Okay. Well, I think that Elvis's earlier recordings probably will outlive any of the later recordings that he made, although they'll all go on forever. I just think that the earlier ones were better. I think most people would agree that they were the ones that will live with us the longest, I think. Jailhouse Rock and Blue Suede Shoes. And it was an era, and I think that we relate to that era more so than any of the very later songs like Suspicious Minds. Although anything the man sang became important, anything he sang. For instance, Ave Maria was, it wasn't Ave Maria, it was How Great Thou Art. That in itself was a classic recording, and I've never heard anyone sing it like that. And once again, that'll go on forever, you know.
I have one more question about Jimmy. Were you surprised to find that he's different off stage compared to his angry performance?
Yes, well, of course, you do that when somebody blows any theory you had about what they were like, what they are like as people. I think you'll find that in most areas. With Jimi Hendrix, he was a much warmer person off stage and much more like everybody else than you would expect of him. And I think that applies to other people. I think it also applies to people in the field of comedy, in the way that you find that most great comedians are very serious off stage. There is always a different end of the spectrum, and people like Jimmy, I don't think he could live his life the way he did on stage. I don't think that's possible. So it didn't really surprise me that much. Most of the energy, or most of the aggression came out in the performance, and I think that counts for a lot of artists as well. Yeah.
Did he influence you as a guitarist?
Well, I'm not a very good guitarist. I'm a rhythm guitarist, so his tremendous stage presence and talent is what influences me, the same as Otis. The person who influenced me as a guitarist is, in fact, Otis Redding, and he plays the guitar in not the conventional way of tuning. He tunes, it's like Hawaiian tuning, straight open majors, and you bar all the majors and you create your own minors. And it's not the right way to play a guitar, but that's the way Otis Redding played. That's the way I play. And it's, in other words, it's a way of playing the guitar the way you weren't taught. If you have to find out for yourself, that's how you end up playing. And that's really where my influence came from.
And one final question. I wondered about any of these artists. Why do you think it's important that we remember them?
Why do I think it's important that we remember them? Well, apart from the fact that it means an awful lot to these people themselves, that they wanted to be remembered, that's why they were doing what they were doing. I think that's why we all do it. There's a little bit of immortality in pop music, and as opposed to other lines of work or other kinds of business. Politics and pop music seems to make people live forever in a certain way, and I think that's what they strive for. And apart from the fact that we love the music.
Thank you.
All right?
Thank you.
Okay. God,